Thanks, everybody. It is, oh my gosh, it's just my pleasure to be here today. Chrissy just did an amazing introduction, and I am so excited to see all of you. Now, you might think that it's kind of odd for Microsoft to be here at this event. And as Chrissy said, our mission is to ensure that every person and organization on the planet can achieve more. And it turns out it's not that different for FFA. You are one of the strongest, best youth organizations on the planet. You are. And I'd like to come together today with you to talk about how technology might be used in the work that you do. And I hope that some of you had an opportunity to visit the Blue Room next door in the exhibit hall to learn about how technology and agriculture work together. And we're so happy to announce that in Fargo, North Dakota, in this image, as you can see. Yes, Fargo. Now, as odd as you might have thought it was to see Microsoft here today, I have to tell you that it was odd for me to think about being here today too, because this is where I grew up. This is Main Street, and the town I grew up in is really known by a couple of things. The first is the railroad, and I don't know if you can see the train station there, and actually the train tracks go right across Main Street. So you got to stop twice a day to wait for the train to go by while you're off doing your errands. So it's known as a railroad town, with the high school being the Newton Railroaders. And it's also known as a town where pacifist Mennonites came 150 years ago to settle and to farm. And those pacifist Mennonites from Russia and from Germany brought wheat to Kansas, the winter wheat that so many people in Kansas still plant today. But that wasn't really my association with the town. For me, it was about the library. That's probably not a surprise. The Carnegie Library that was on Main Street was where I spent a lot of time. And things were quite different back then. With the library, I used this card file, which many of you probably don't even see much of today. And I used that card file to type on the typewriter. And my clicker is not quite doing what it should back here. Help, help. Okay, I'm just going to talk, and hopefully the slides catch up with me. I used the card file, which I typed then on the typewriter. We essentially listened to the radio, and we listened to the radio to the World Series, which is going on right now. And we used the telephone from the main spot in the living room so that everybody heard everything that you wanted to say on the telephone to your friends. And we had the television where we watched the first men on the moon as they went onto the moon, and that grainy black and white TV crowded around in the living room. And then later on, I used a computer. And with the computer, I remember it weighed about 40 pounds, and we lugged it around with us wherever we went. So as I thought about that, a lot of things have changed since then. Now, with the cell phones that you all have in your hands, every single one of those devices is captured in that cell phone. It's the computer, it's the phone, it's Skype, and it's much, much more. It's Twitter, it's WhatsApp, it's all kinds of social media that we didn't have back then. And a lot of that was really related to the start of Microsoft and to Bill Gates and Paul Allen in those very, very early years. I started at Microsoft not long after that. They started this company about the time I was in college. I joined a little bit after that, as Chrissy said, as the first female attorney at Microsoft all those years ago. Now, there's kind of analogies, really, with FFA, because about that same time was when, really, FFA admitted its first female members right about the time I was graduating from high school. So I've had a great career at Microsoft, and I'm still enjoying my career at Microsoft. But I have to say that back then, I couldn't wait to leave town. I mean, I really couldn't wait to leave town. It was kind of isolating, and I wasn't sure that the hopes and the dreams that I had would be able to come true there. But today, if I were thinking about it, with the advances in technology and the ability to participate in the world sitting from right there, I'm not sure I would have left. I think I might have stayed. I might even go back there one day. But I will say one of the reasons that makes this possible is that we are yet on the dawn of a brand new era in technology. And when we think about this era, we know that previous ones really give us some lessons. And with each era, there has been major advances and major things that have moved forward. 250 years ago was the first time that a steam engine and a train could go faster than a horse. That really changed transportation. It really changed the ability to move goods and services. My grandfather used to put buckets of milk on the train to go to market back in those days. And it enabled people to travel and explore the country and to live in different places the way they had not been able to do before. 150 years ago, we started major industrialization, and textiles, electricity were really a hallmark of this era. So women who lived in rural areas at the time had to spin, and they had to make their own yarn, and then they created the clothes to be able to buy fabric, to sew, and to have washing machines and sewing machines were huge steps forward for women. Lots of steps forward for men, too, in terms of how agriculture was undertaken. Just 50 years ago, this revolution was a little less visible. But with this revolution, we saw computers be available to virtually every person on the planet. We saw the rise of cell phones. This enabled business to do more, and it also enabled you to enjoy entertainment and to get information in very different ways. Just 5 years ago, and notice how fast these things are now coming, we began what some call the fourth industrial revolution. And with it, we will see lots of different changes. We see changes here in the physical world with robotics. We see changes in the biological world with things that will happen with healthcare. And we see changes in the digital world with technologies like blockchain and Bitcoin really enabling us to do different kinds of things. This revolution is powered by something that we call the cloud. The cloud really is just lots and lots and lots of computers in one place, computing information and analytics. And they do that from sensors located throughout the world with data going up, data analyzed, and then coming down with these personal devices that really make life better and will enable us to solve problems and create conveniences and efficiencies that we'd never been able to do before. In effect, it is the computer understanding our world. But I want to be really clear. It's not the computer taking over the world. It is people who run the computers and computers enhancing human ingenuity, human creativity. So what does that mean? That means there will be lots of new jobs going forward in the future, coming from lots of different sectors. We know that the area of healthcare will change dramatically. Advanced manufacturing will change dramatically. Information technology and people using technology and the jobs that will create will change dramatically. And the fourth big area of change, agriculture. Agriculture has always taken advantage of technology, and in this era, it will be more than ever. So let's talk about essentially what the new jobs are. The new jobs will come from titles that we don't even know. About 65% of the jobs going forward will be titles that we don't have today. They'll relate to biology, they'll relate to environmental, they'll relate to healthcare, to all of these different kinds of areas. So as we then think about it, we need to ask what kinds of skills will be needed for these new jobs. Well, here's the good news. FFA teaches all of them. We're talking about skills related to critical thinking, logical thinking, the ability to communicate, the ability to collaborate together, and the ability to be creative. These are the skills that you will be able to adapt going forward, no matter what you do, no matter whether you live in Newton, Kansas, or whether you live in New York City. If you have those skills, you will be a lifelong learner. And it is absolutely critical, as you all go forward, to know that your education doesn't stop the day you stop going to school. It doesn't stop for the rest of your life. And those basic skills and the ability to be a lifelong learner as technology moves forward ever faster will be critical. So let me tell you a little bit about one of my favorite lifelong learners. This is a young man. His name is Ranveer Chandra. Ranveer grew up in India. He came from parents who lived in the city, but in the summers, he worked on his parents' or his grandparents' rural farm in India. And he saw how difficult it was for them to earn a living. Ranveer went on. He has a PhD from a great land-grant university, Cornell University. Yay. And Ranveer now works at Microsoft. He's been at Microsoft a long time. He works on issues related to battery research and all of the networks that keep our computers going together. But Ranveer also, while at Microsoft, has decided to really work in the agricultural area, going back to what he saw with his grandparents. And he has created this technology called FarmBeats. FarmBeats is a technology which puts sensors in the ground. You can use a drone, or you can just use a balloon with a cell phone attached to it to take images of your field. And then with the sensors and with the images, creating the heat map and the picture, you can get a very good sense of moisture, how much moisture might be needed, and you can basically water only those areas that really need it. This increases the yield of the field, and it also ensures that we conserve water, which we know is very, very important. So these sensors and this technology, we hope will go forward and be used not only in rural India, but in farms all across the world and here in the United States. We know that technology is used in agriculture, all kinds of places. I sat in a combine like this about 6 months ago. 100 sensors when that combine is going, sending information up into the cloud. And some of you probably know much more about that than I do. And right at Microsoft, all kinds of agriculture needed. In the cafeteria where I go to lunch every day, we have hydroponic plants, mostly lettuces, so that our salads are essentially clipped off of these every day. It sounds a little silly, but what we're doing is testing again how you can recycle water and how essentially you can conserve water and be more efficient in the growing of crops. So I talked a little bit earlier about Bill and the start of Microsoft. What you might not know is that he's very interested in climate today and climate preservation and energy. And he recently had a chance to meet with Ranveer, and I'd like to show you what they talked about.
More than 3/4 of the poor people in the world are farmers. They're faced with a very tough problem. They have to grow enough food to feed their family every year. When you think of digital technology, you don't think of measuring soil moisture. You don't think about helping people know when to plant or understand what's going wrong on their farm. But if we can make these sensors small enough, cheap enough, then the chance to get this down to more and more farmers, get them additional productivity, it's pretty exciting.
We're taking this data and we built machine learning and AI models to do two things. One is virtual sensor prediction. So we're predicting things like leaf wetness, evapotranspiration, and solar radiation. We use the data to customize the model for the farm, and we are getting very accurate results for each one of those.
These sensors use a new type of connectivity that's very inexpensive. It's called TV white spaces. TV white space is unused bandwidth in between the TV broadcast channels. Governments are now allowing this bandwidth to be used to transmit data. In this case, it's the data coming from the field that goes back to the computers that helps create the best advice to the farmer.
What you're seeing here is a TV white spaces router. This is like your Wi-Fi antenna at home, powering all of this through solar panels. You just power this on, and you get Wi-Fi on demand in the farm. We use it to send drone imagery. Once the flight is complete, it'll start transmitting the data over the white spaces to do precision map generation.
Whoa.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, bringing it back.
Cutting leaves. Any data you can get to farmers can make a huge difference. The weather is always highly variable. Deciding should they invest in fertilizer, when do they plant, understanding which crop would be the right one at this time. Even 20% more productivity means that they can afford school fees, save a little bit for a tough year. Climate change is going to make the farmer's job a lot harder, and just closing that yield gap, even a modest amount, would make a huge difference for all those farmers.
I always love to hear Bill talk. I remember meeting him when he was just in his 30s, and it's great to see how he's changed over his time and the commitment that he has as well. And why is the commitment important? When I graduated from high school, there were half the number of the people on the planet that there are today. And we know that that number is going to continue growing. We know that that means that there have to be at least 60% more food production than there is today by 2040 and 2050. And what that means not only is more food production, but as my nephew, the crop consultant, will tell you, it needs to be better nutritional value, and it needs to be able to not only sustain, but regenerate the land. Now, as Bill said, and Ranveer has said, it's really important as we think about agriculture to ensure that you have broadband connectivity. And today, still 40% of the planet does not have internet. And we're hopeful that with new technologies that Bill and Ranveer demonstrated, we'll be able to bridge that gap in places that are far away in order to help to ensure more sustainable agriculture and increase yields. But at the same time, we know that not everybody in the United States still has internet. There are 19.4 million Americans in rural areas who still do not have access to high-quality internet. Actually, some would say that that number is underestimated when you really think about the density with which we need to provide that connectivity. So it's really important for you and for us and others to talk to our legislators, our school board, our states about the importance of finding ways to bring broadband to rural areas in the United States as well. Bill also mentioned the second part of this, which is climate change. We know that as we need to increase food yields, our climate is changing, and we are seeing more and more severe weather in places and in times that we hadn't expected it and that we hadn't seen before. And technology can help here, too, in terms of prediction of weather patterns, in terms of getting first responders on the scene more quickly as a result of predicting that, and then in terms of satellite mapping, so that we can ensure that when the responders get on the ground, they know where the energy sources are, where to go. So these both opportunities and challenges, they require a lot of imagination. They require you, all of you in this room, to be creators, to be inventors, to be innovators as you go through your life. And if we can do that, then we can think about a world in which technology marries with agriculture to enable us to do more to enable you to do more in your lives and to help others around you. Now, some people could be a little pessimistic. This is a very sad picture. Some people think this is what the world's going to be like. I don't. Not for a minute. Especially not for a minute when I look around this room. In this picture, you see little kids learning their first game of hopscotch. But instead of the X's and the O's from the alphabet, they're using the zeros and the ones that are the basis for computer coding. I love this picture because it demonstrates to me how technology can be used from the beginning with education, so that as you go forward, you learn those critical skills and you can adapt them using technology throughout your life. So as I look around this room, I'm optimistic. I couldn't be more optimistic after spending the day with you, going through the green room, going through the exhibit hall. I know that our future is bright with you because of you. Thanks very much for inviting me here today. There you are. Oh, I couldn't see you. It's great.